I call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's take a moment of silence. Thank you. Roll call beginning with Commissioner Doug Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Steben.
Mr. Steben here.
Commissioner Culbertson.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
And I am here. Okay. We have no official public comment signed up, but I do have a statement that I would like to read before we begin our administrative business because it somewhat pertains to public comment. As the chair of the Board of County Commissioners, one of my responsibilities is to ensure that our meetings are conducted in accordance with our existing policies and the laws adopted by the state of Kansas. That being said, I would like to take this opportunity to remind individuals attending or planning to attend our meetings that you need to schedule a public comment prior to our meetings and that members of the audience are not to confront individuals who are making public comment. Neither are members of the public to otherwise disrupt the meeting, including interacting with staff or commissioners during the meeting unless invited to do so by a commissioner. In the future, one warning will be given. Any further disruption, the meeting will be stopped, and individuals who disregard proper decorum will be asked to leave that meeting room before the meeting continues. Thank you in advance for your cooperation. Okay. Any administrative business? Mark?
Commissioners, I was asked to just kind of touch again briefly on appraisals, since the appraisal notices did go out last week and we had a few phone calls. Just a reminder to folks that the comparable sales of homes are what impact the value of your house the most. The county appraiser is required by law to have your home appraised within 10%, either positive or negative, of current market value on your home. That's a statutory requirement, direction given by the state. That is not optional on their part. They are graded on how successful they are in that process. They have to file reports at the state reviews it, and if they are not within that 10% margin, they are given a plan on how to get back into compliance. Last week when the appraiser's office gave their presentation, you may have noted that they were around 86%, which is on the low side, not the high side, and in the 7 years that I've watched those presentations, not one time have they been on the high side. They've always been on the low side. So I know some folks probably got some pretty shocking news in the mail about their valuations, but it really is in relation to comparable sales in the county. And the 10 to 12% increases is not uncommon for appraisals this time.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked.
I think we all were.
I think I was more shocked.
Hey, when if you're in a neighborhood where there are a lot of sales and the sales just keep ratcheting up, unfortunately,
I know.
the way the system is set up by the state, it will continue. It's just the way it is. And I can say personally, in the last 5 years, my property value has went up 50%.
Yeah.
Last year was 20% on my home alone, and it's less this year because of the big increase last year. But I would also say that it is maybe within the 10% of where it would sell if it went on the market. So I can't complain about the value. I'm not happy that my valuation is going up that much, but I can't complain that it's inaccurate either.
Okay. Do you have anything?
Johnson. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Doug. I wanted to just ask you just a question. My understanding is that the Property Valuation Division of the Kansas Department of Revenue makes the rules and regulations for setting the appraisal standards that are used in making these decisions. It's not the county commissioners, correct?
That is correct. And it's also statutory and somewhat even in the state constitution.
It is written into the state constitution.
Yeah, Johnson County, they had a news story on Johnson County. Theirs was 12%, and Channel 4 did a story on it, and basically said it was a supply and demand issue because people are wanting to move to Johnson County and step it up on the prices. But with that also being said, I think with some of the recent discussions with our state representatives, that it's finally looking like the state is going to do something about it, but it's not going to be anytime soon. If it's going to have to be a constitutional amendment, it's going to have to go on the ballot, and then you're going to have to reinvent the wheel. So you're looking at 2024 when they put it on the ballot, because they're not going to do it this year, or come up with another plan. So you're still at least 2 or 3 years out before this is going to get fixed at the state level, if it gets fixed.
Yeah, one thing I didn't like, though, I read in the paper the other day, and the Commissioner Neely, I think, Lance Neely, said that we're talking about demand transfers and getting the funds back, and I was a little disheartened to hear him say that it's never going to pass. Well, if you take that attitude and you go up there, of course it's never going to pass. We put you in office to go fight for everybody. That law was made to reduce property tax. We're supposed to be receiving that every year, and I know it looks like we're giving an excuse, but if we could get that money back, property taxes, I guarantee you'd see some mill levies going down dramatically. Before an elected official will say it's not going to happen, that's just not going to happen, was just took me off guard, because I know the other ones are at least trying to fight the battle to get that lowered.
Mark, would you sell your house for what the county has it appraised at?
Like I said, it's close, but no, it would sell for more than it currently is appraised for.
So
absolutely,
and it's gone up 50%. You said
50% in 5 years.
So I mean that. So I had a meeting yesterday in Topeka with PVD and that Karen Tyson's tax group that we're working on, figuring out a solution for what's going on. The problem is the system they put in place is working. They said when we have reappraisal, we want everybody to pay fair market value taxes on their home. Well, the reason we had reappraisal was they usually didn't change the value on property until it sold. So you had somebody that was living in their house for 50 years, they were still paying on a 50-year-old value. So they came up with this system to make sure everybody had current market value on everybody's house, so everybody paid their fair share. And the problem is the system's working, but we have shifted from using property taxes for 40% of paying our bills in 1960 to over 80% now. Mm-hmm. So the problem is not the appraisal system. It's working. The problem is how much weight we put on property taxes. And this group yesterday, it sounds like we're getting some momentum headed in the right direction to shift weight. There's basically 3 pedestals of taxation. There's property tax, sales tax, and income tax. Right now, we put 0 county budget on income tax. We put very little on sales tax, and we put almost 90% on property tax. We need to even that out to where we put about 33% on each one. And they're starting to open up to the idea and understand by using the same system over and over and thinking it's the problem when it's not the problem, you're going to end up at the same place. You've got to reimagine what the problem is, and it sounds like now they're finally starting to figure that out.
But how many bills are being introduced to exempt some people?
And the more exemptions they give, it's just a tax shift. Somebody else is going to have to pick up
It
that
just
burden.
shifts the burden back to the homeowner,
It's
more
only
burden
homeowners.
on the homeowners.
Yeah.
Right.
But Jeff, I think you're right. I have seen and heard more elected officials in the state level having that conversation. So,
Starting to understand.
the last couple of years I've heard this county commissioners preach on that and across the state, and I think finally we're getting to see something has to be done, whether it's a 5% increase or whatever. There needs to be some kind of, I could sell my house, gone up, $100,000 in 3 years. I could sell it for that, but where I live today, but that doesn't mean I want to.
Right.
But still, are you going to have to pay those taxes? When you're going up 10, 15, 20% on your property tax, there's got to be a cutoff somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be a limit where you say, okay. And when you've got a burden of cash flow, supposedly for the last 2 years from the state, that money needs to be dispersed for the area it's hurting. Where is it hurting? It's hurting property tax and homeowners.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm finished. For a second.
Anybody else have anything else? Mike, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Oh, I have a whole lot I'd like to add, but I don't know that it's going to do any good. So,
Okay, thank you.
I got one that doesn't retain the property tax.
Okay, go ahead.
March is Agriculture Month in the state of Kansas. In honor of Kansas' largest industry, employer, and economic driver, the entire month of March has been proclaimed Agriculture Month by Governor Laura Kelly. In addition, the Kansas Department of Agriculture, Kansas Livestock Association, and other ag organizations will observe Kansas Agriculture Day on March 21st. Throughout Ag Month, Kansas Livestock Association will celebrate the hardworking men and women in agriculture and recognize that the crops and animals grown on farms and ranches in Kansas are feeding families across the state and around the world. So,
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'm glad the governor did that.
Yep.
And
Thank you
that
for
is a
sharing
big economic driver for the state of Kansas.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely, and we
Yes, sir.
continue to have
And I'd
individuals.
like to think that this board supports agriculture in this Leavenworth County.
Absolutely.
That's all I have.
Okay, well, if we don't have anything further, we'll move on to the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion is second. Begin voting with Commissioner Doug Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Steben.
Mr. Stephen votes aye.
Commissioner Culberson.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Consent agenda has been approved. Formal board action. We need to consider a motion to authorize the chairperson to sign the application for aid to local grants for the health department. Jamie, come on up.
Welcome, Jamie.
Good
Miller?
morning.
This is the annual process to apply for aid to local grants. This is just the application process. The awards will come in June as it follows the state fiscal year. But this is the process that we have to get them in now for us to be able to receive that funding.
Does anybody have any questions for Jamie?
No.
Grant money, can't survive without it.
Absolutely. Commissioner Steben, do you have anything for Jamie?
No, I think this is something we got to get moving.
I'll make a motion to authorize the chairperson to sign the application for the aid to local grants for the health department.
I'll second it.
I have a motion and a second. Begin voting with Commissioner Doug Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Steben.
Aye.
Commissioner Culberson.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks,
Have a
Jamie.
good day. Now we need to consider a motion to approve Board Order 2023-2, initiating tax lien foreclosure action upon the properties with delinquent property taxes.
Morning, Commission.
Oh, there you are, Mike.
Hey, I didn't see you come in. Morning.
Go ahead.
This is the request for the board order to initiate the tax lien foreclosure proceedings in district court. Usually start the process in the fall, notifying eligible property owners who are eligible to have those liens foreclosed, and give them an initial deadline and kind of weed it out to get a lesser amount of eligible properties that have to have further abstract work done, which is we're getting ready to have take place at this time. Probably filed action in June is the plan. So, probably still be some redemptions take place between now and then, but at this point there's a little over 50 properties that are eligible, and they well exceed the statutory threshold for requiring an action to be taken.
And what is that? What is that timeline on that? The timeline?
For redemption? For most properties, it's 3 years from the time they're sold to the treasurer,
Gotcha.
which doesn't happen until September after the year the
Yeah.
tax is imposed.
Okay. Thank you.
Seems like 5 years, but it's
That's what I was.
statutory.
From other
it's
people
3
I've talked
years.
to, that's what it seems like. Yeah.
So you have a tax sale every September?
Tax sale depends upon, well, there's a tax sale by statute where the only eligible bidder is the treasurer. So that's a statutory function that isn't the same as a tax lien foreclosure auction that we hold out on the courthouse staff.
Right. Okay.
And that varies just depending upon when a judgment is obtained.
I believe your last one brought in quite a bit more money than the previous sales.
There were several properties that sold for significantly more than the taxes, so there was excess funds going back to property owners and other lien holders. That was in May. I'm about to the point of being able to have a judgment in the one I filed last year. I don't know if we'll get the judgment in time to have the tax sale again in May. It may end up being in June. I was trying to get it done April or May, but don't have total control over the process.
Okay.
I guess what I was asked, the reason I asked the question, it's not like they come the next day and we go to sale or something like that. There's time, there's years involved before it finally something has to be done.
Right. For most properties, the property owner has, again, a statutory 3-year redemption before the lien can even begin to be foreclosed, and then they continue to have that redemption right until the action.
All the way up until the sale, right?
Thank you.
Are you ready for a motion?
I'm ready for a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the board order 2023-2 initiating tax lien foreclosure action upon properties with delinquent property taxes.
Is there a second? I'll second the motion. Begin voting with Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Stephen.
Aye.
Commissioner Culberson.
Aye.
Commissioner Smith.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Roger.
Okay. Presentation and discussion items. Anybody have anything they'd like to share with the commission?
I have Basin City Council tonight, and I missed the tomahawk ribbon cutting on Monday at Basher.
I totally forgot that too.
I had a funeral thing I had to go to, and I could have made it, and it just didn't happen. And that's all I've got.
Commissioner Stephen, do you have anything? You haven't been in town. So.
I just want to express my appreciation to Commissioner Culberson. Last week I had an invitation to the Linwood Library, and with my dad being at the hospital, I had to be out of town, and he took that on, and I do appreciate that. And there were about 50 people there, so I appreciate the fact that we didn't have to cancel it. So thank you, Jeff, and I appreciate all commissioners for helping me out in this time. Thanks.
And we do send our sincere prayers for your father to completely recover.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't know how that was going to go, sending the wicked commissioner from the north down to the south end of the county and talk to them folks. But it worked out pretty good.
Made it back.
Yeah. Easton City Council meeting Monday night. They talked about their cleanup efforts for the spring. I reminded them how the county allows every citizen in the county to dump one time a year at the transfer station for free. So that'll probably help them a lot with their cleanup efforts. I explained to them how we used to have a cleanup week and had everybody come for free that week, but it was hard for people to schedule, so we just let people go whenever they want, during the year. Leavenworth City Commission meeting last night, and they talked about the ride KC Leavenworth. Vicki, I know, is a big part of that too.
Exciting.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing I was going to talk about was the meeting I had yesterday morning in Topeka with PVD director and Karen Tyson and the other group that's working on this stuff. And one thing I just forgot to mention earlier was they ran the numbers, and I think it's surprising to people. We could completely eliminate property taxes on your house, your car, boat, RVs, all your property tax, completely eliminate it by raising income tax and sales tax 4%. I don't agree with completely eliminating property tax because then you're shifting onto one leg again, or two legs. But you could cut property taxes in half by only a 2% increase in income tax and sales tax. I haven't talked to one person yet that would not trade paying 2% more income tax and sales tax for half their property tax. So that's the direction we're trying to get some momentum behind. So the next step is to get the public behind this idea so that they can push state representatives.
That would actually be a quicker fix than a constitutional amendment.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's the real fix. The constitutional
Now,
amendment
we have
to
to come
talk
back.
about.
But it would all have to be 100% go to property tax. You couldn't say,
Two things that they're
you can't add something else to the bill that
Down the
we're
line.
gonna fund.
That's the two big hurdles. So Senate Bill 79 was
Right.
a step in the right direction, but it had a lot of problems with it. It said you only had to use 50% of it toward property taxes. That's a bad idea.
That's a bad idea.
It
That's
needs
a
to be
tax
100%.
increase.
And they're also trying to figure out how down the road. I mean, we're all here now saying this is what we'll do. We'll use, if we were to get 2% income tax and sales tax, we'll use it 100% toward property tax. But that's just us saying that. We've got to figure out a way to build it in the bill so that everybody comes after us.
That every
and
county
every
has
county
to do it. Well,
has
they can
to
do
it.
that.
That's what we're
They
trying
can-
to figure out is how do you
They can
build
they
it
can
to where
dictate
it
how
won't
that's
just be
gonna be.
because we want to make sure, just like you said, that it's not an added tax.
Right.
Down the
and
road.
spend 50% on something else, some fluff somewhere else that
Yep.
got attached to the bill.
Yep,
Yeah.
you got to make sure it's just
Seen
not
that.
an added tax, and they don't
And
use it all.
it's got to be in the bill because we're not going to be here.
Exactly.
You know.
Yep. So that's
So
what we're working
You don't
on.
want the next board to have to be able to do something else with it.
Exactly. So
Gotta
that's
go
the
toward
hurdles we're
property
trying to
tax.
figure out is how do you secure it to make sure that it works the way you intended it to, and not just be another added tax on top of what we already got.
I know this is a question that probably you can't answer, Jeff, and I appreciate what you're doing up there, and I do like that idea myself. Is there a timeline on this? Do we look at, say, by educating the public and something like that, we're 2 or 3 years out, or is there any idea on that whatsoever?
I mean, it could happen in a year if you got everybody behind it and
Exactly.
understand what's going on and get the legislatures behind it. It can happen really fast.
Right.
Yeah.
With the Constitution Amendment, have to go on the ballot.
Yeah,
and
we've
they'd
gone
have to
through that.
reinvent the wheel. And I'm sorry, that's going to be probably 3 years out.
Right.
2 or 3 years. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it would be a voter's choice thing. You'd put it in a vote for the public.
That's good.
But this is exactly geared toward, I know, for at least Leavenworth, Geary, and Riley counties, because when somebody said, "Hey, we're going to trade you jobs for us paying property taxes on the exemption property,
Right.
the federal property," this is what they should have put in place right up
That
front.
time, yes.
Because we're an
Tax.
income-rich county, but we're a property tax-poor county. So if we could somehow shift that weight to the income tax,
That sounds promising.
it would
It
cut
does.
everybody's
Across the
property
river.
tax in half.
That sounds
But it's got to be done at the state level.
Yeah. I appreciate your
Uh,
energy.
This is Commissioner Stevens.
Go ahead.
That's all.
I've just been thinking a lot about this lately, and we've done this for 4 years. As commissioner, it's like March 1st of every year, people get their tax bills, and people are outraged, and they stay concerned about this for about 6 or 8 weeks, and then it kind of cools down. And I think people need to realize you need to stay on your legislators in Topeka.
all
It
year.
needs to become a number one issue, because we're not getting any. While the commissioner, we can do what we can do locally, but we have very little power over the real system, and we need folks to stay on your legislators and really push this through to see it change.
Agreed.
Okay.
Anything,
I-
Commissioner Smith?
A couple of things. I had the opportunity to attend the Associated of the United States Army breakfast this past Monday. A lot of folks showed up on post. It was very good to listen to the folks and what they've got going on. Also, since Chairperson Commissioner Cause is so busy, I'll sit in for her on Thursday for the LCDC board meeting.
Thank you.
Yeah. We've got St. Patrick's Day parade, I know, and Vicki, I'm going to ride with you if that's okay. Everybody's abandoning me and you. I guess they don't want to be in the car with us. Thanks,
Oh,
Jeff.
I'm going.
Oh, are you?
Yeah,
Good.
Doug's going.
Oh, good. Okay. Oh, Jeff left us.
Jeff's going to
As
go
long
play
as it's on the
band.
agenda, I'll
He's
be
going to go
with
play
you,
rock and
folks.
roll.
Okay. The other thing I'd like to bring up, too, last Thursday at the Lansing Council meeting, if y'all don't know, Dave Trinko, who's been a council member for over 20-something years, he had stepped down because of some issues, but his wife had just passed away a few months ago. I have never worked the more common sense person in my life. I think there's some other elected officials that could follow his lead. He got to what the project was. He asked the tough questions, and he did it in a civil way, and we get a lot done. So I definitely will miss Dave. He was, they advertised and they put Kevin Gardner on. Kevin Gardner served on the Lansing Council meeting, area for a couple of years and stepped down. He's a good person. I think he'll serve them very well. I just want to pass that on.
Yeah, he'll be missed. I knew him when he ran the business.
Yeah.
And he's auto in the shop.
Yeah, good guy. And his dad.
Yep.
Yeah.
But you're right, absolutely right. He was a common sense, or he is a common sense.
Yeah,
guy.
yeah.
He really is. That's what you need on these boards.
Yep.
Okay, well, I'm going to remind Commissioner Doug Smith that he and I attended the JCAB meeting last week, and he had a really nice catered lunch, I
We
heard.
sure did. I forgot about that.
We did attend the JCAB meeting. I represent the city of Leavenworth now, and Doug represents the county, just for those that are not aware. And I had to leave that meeting as soon as it was over to visit with our auditors. We had our audit. I'm not sure if it's completely complete now, or I don't think, but I represented the commissioners for the audit on Friday afternoon to answer their questions, which were minimal. Mark, do you have anything to add on the audit at all?
Oh, this is their on-site phase. They come and go through all the books and everything, then they take it all back to their office and work on it for a couple of months. We usually, end of April, first part of May is typical when we get the final results.
Mark, speaking of that, maybe it's not the practice of the county. I know it was the first year. I thought we have the audit discussion every year, put it out in front of the people. Well, I haven't seen it yet. I got the book on my desk. I remember the year before we discussed some issues, and I think they've been taken care of. But commissioners, is that what we do with the audit? I know most places do present that on the agenda item to be discussed if there's anything that needs to be discussed.
We did. One point, I know.
We did
April, I believe, was here one year.
Right.
going over the audit.
Yeah, but it wasn't.
Is that who doing the audit this year?
Yes, she was.
April?
Yes,
Okay.
she was the person that I was questioned by. But
Yes, typically annually, the audit firm comes in and presents the audit to the Board of County Commissioners. It doesn't require acceptance, it's just the facts of the audit.
Well, I always thought that was a good
Yes,
thing to do.
typically annually they would come in and present it.
Cities do it, counties do it. I'd just like to have that on the agenda once a year, just to let people know that.
We are being audited.
Yes,
We
sir.
are being audited.
That's exactly where I'm going, Doug.
and it sounds like it's
all
going well so
accounted
far.
for. All the public's money is accounted for.
Yes.
So, Mark, if you could make sure, if it's all right with the other county commissioners, you can make sure that occurs. I'd appreciate it.
And some of our audit was a little more in depth because of the ARPA funding. And,
Yeah,
and Mark
I'm
has
sure
done
would
an
be.
incredible job of keeping us straight on how we're spending those funds.
He does
So-
do a good job on that.
Okay, does anybody else?
I
have
have
anything
one more
else?
thing. It's not really the audit, but it's about our budget, what we're going to work on this year and the upcoming months. Typically in the past, we've always give Mark a number, and Mark went and worked with all the department heads. I would actually like the commissioners to maybe work with the department heads along with Mark and have have the department heads come to our work session, and we're one-on-one with the department heads this year.
I agree with that, Doug. I think that's a great idea.
Well, I just, this board's job is budget and policy, and I think we put a lot on Mark for that, and then it comes back, and I would just like to have the department heads explain to this board their budget, anything they need or any shortfalls we have, because I know it's awful early because we don't have oil bids. I'm not sure we got chemical bids yet. We might have. We don't know our bridge report, what road we may have to close. We don't know what grant funding is going to come in that the county would have to match. I would really like to meet with the department heads meet with the board, along with Mark, of course. That's my opinion.
I'm just smiling because that's how one of the things you can tell we don't talk about certain things, because I just had this same conversation with Mark a couple weeks ago.
Oh.
Yep. Good idea.
Okay. All right.
Well, it sounds like we have a consensus to do that, so, Mark, you can,
Yeah, Commissioners,
I can read your
that
mind,
is
yes.
something that
All right. Your powers are getting stronger.
Yeah, that is something that several of the commissioners have talked about, and we think it's important, primarily because what inflation has done, what the economy currently is, some of the challenges the departments are having with the current budget. And I think that you're going to see it when we come in and start with the CIP, which I think is 2 weeks from now. We'll have the CIP on the agenda for a work session.
okay,
I
good.
think you're going to see some of the challenges that we face with that. And so,
We need to remember that we also have, some of our department heads are elected officials,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, I understand that, but I mean, we used to do it for years before we had county administrator, and the department heads know better what they can cut than
Right.
a commissioner does. 'Cause
Exactly.
I've been on the other
Yes.
side of that table.
Exactly where I was headed with it. Because, like you said, we used to do that.
We
That's
have
what we used to do.
great department heads, and they're all very frugal.
Yeah.
And,
And
I just think it's important because that is part of our job, budget and policy.
And now I know we get the narrative from each department head,
Mhm.
explains their budget in each line item. But, with the new, it's not new, but the revenue neutral Senate Bill 13 thing, they're going to ask us, why can't you remain revenue neutral? So the reason I was asking for this was each department head, some of them have been here a long time and some of them have not. The ones that have been here a long time, I wanted them to list out more specifically in their narrative, not just about this year, but I want them to go back and list all the things that I've probably forgot about. For instance, we used to use 300,000-mile sheriff's cars and give them to all the other departments to try to save money. We did a 5-year study, and it showed that was actually costing us
Maintenance.
way more money, replacing engines and transmissions and tow bills and downtime for work. You'd have to give them 3 cars so they could have one running all the time. We did RIFs, reduction in forces. We cut 4 holidays out because holidays are expensive when you pay your 24/7 folks double time. When you cut a holiday out, that saves the county a lot of money. We did hours, paid time off, or unpaid time off, unpaid leave. We've done a lot of things and different things in each different department. So that's why this year I wanted a more in-depth narrative from each department head, just exactly what you're talking about, because we're going to ask them directly. We understand why you can't remain revenue neutral, but you need to lay that out for us so that we can explain it to our patrons why you can't remain revenue neutral if you can't. So, yep, we're on the same page.
Okay. I didn't know that you'd already talked about that. I'm sorry.
no, well, it sounds like great minds think
I'm going to
alike.
start reading his mind now.
Okay,
Vicki?
yes, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember it was either the first year or two after Commissioner Timke and I were elected, we had a more in-depth process, and I thought it was very productive. And I know I think instead of doing it in one day, we had to stretch it out over 2 days. But I think it's well worth it because you get a lot deeper understanding of what's going on in each of those departments. And I think for this coming year's budget, I think we're going to have to really dig in.
I think 2 days is kind of crunching it.
We probably will need
I
more
think
than
we're going to need
that
more than 2 days.
if we're going to meet with them.
Well, I just remember
Because
that
we may have to meet with some of them more than once, I think,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
We just have to open up our schedules.
I'll be here every day.
And like I said, my point is, This revenue neutral concept is not new to Leavenworth County. We've been trying to operate as revenue neutral for the past 30 years, but people don't see that. They don't know what we've done over the last 30 years. So my goal is to show them we've been cutting this and we've been cutting that.
What we
Right.
have.
It's why we're in dire straits. It's exactly
Well, we're
why.
taking over $1 million around there approximately in the last 2 years out of our budget. $1 million is a lot of money, and that helps roads, and that helps bridges, that helps everything else. So it's going to be a tough year.
But if we got a bridge that they say it's got to be closed, it's got to be closed.
Okay.
Well, I think those infrastructure issues are the number one priority to me. Is even if we have to look at some of the other departments going, you can have individual departments that have to go revenue neutral, but we cannot let the infrastructure of the county deteriorate, and this is very
Any
important.
further
I was
deterioration?
going to say we already have let it deteriorate. We
Yeah.
can't let it go further.
And I know Mark and Bill are putting
agree.
together. And
I agree with that.
And I know Mark and Bill are putting together a list of bridge
Right.
conditions.
Right.
And we're going to hit a magic year here in the not too distant future. I would say about 12 to 15 years, where about 50 bridges are all due to be replaced at the same time. What are we going to do then?
We're going to close roads.
Yep. That's what it looks like.
Well, do we have anything else brighter to report?
Right?
Well,
No,
I'm just saying
It's
it's
a
our
fact.
job, and we need to do
You're
it
right.
and not put it all on Mark.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is second. Starting with the commissioner.
Public comment?
Oh. Were you signed up for public comment?
No, ma'am, I wasn't.
Then-
I don't think it's required.
It is required.
In the policy, if you want me to read it, it says encouraged.
Okay. You have 3 minutes, please.
Policy also says 5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes, please.
Eric McMillan, I'm from Easton Township,
I heard.
Jeff Culbertson's district. It wasn't on the agenda, but we did go quite heavily into taxing and looming property tax increases. I would like to just say that we need to be candid, or encourage you as the Board of County Commissioners to be candid as we face this, and also transparent as we look at proposed budgets. The candid part has to do with information. Just to remind, not to remind you, obviously you know it already, but to remind maybe everybody else, when it comes to county levied taxes, the variable on those taxes as far as increases or holding the line is right here in this room, with the exception of Mr. Stephen with his dad. I don't think anyone in here, unless we buy or sell multiple houses in a year, affects the assessment, because that's based on comparative sales. But this room controls the mill levy that is multiplied by assessed value to gain the property tax bill. And I think we need to be candid about that. This room also, for county levy taxes, controls the amount of the budget and whether the budget exceeds revenue neutral. Okay, that's all through the mill levy. That's decided for county levy taxes right here. So I would just encourage you to be candid about that. Okay. What I'd like to also encourage is this, as we go through the budgeting process, that we introduce a level of transparency in the proposed budgets, the availability of those proposed budgets prior to this summer, prior to the statutory revenue neutral hearing, so that people like me, people like the rest of the taxpayers who may be facing significant increases in the property taxes they pay can see what the county in detail actually intends to spend the money on. And we have not done that in the past. Other counties do that. So I would encourage you to make those draft budget proposals by the various offices and agencies and recipients of county tax money available, including the narratives, to the public on the county website. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Eric.
Okay. Anything further?
I would just encourage everyone to go to school board meetings and look at school budgets also.
Yeah, we already have a motion, a second.
Motion and
Aye.
second. Begin voting with
Aye.
Commissioner Dougson. Aye. Commissioner Stephen?
Aye.
Commissioner Culberson?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.